Caffè lungo? Ah, grazie. You see, one thing that I love about living in Italy as a digital nomad is that the espressos are only 120 euros and they're good and cheap. But of course, living here is more than cheap coffee. As any other European place, it can be very expensive. So let's go back to my co-living and tell you how much does it cost. All right, I spent around 2 months in Italy, living both in the north in Turin and now in the south in Palermo. And I got a good idea what things actually cost. So I'm gonna show you the expenses of both places. This is what I do in all my city guides. At the end, I put the cost of living for 1 month. Let's start with the biggest one, which is rent. In Turin, I spent around 1,500 euros because it was a listing in Airbnb, but I found out there's also a company called Wonderful Italy, so the price is a little bit higher because they find like the best accommodations with a proper, like a workspace. And this one was in the San Salvador area, a nice area close to the best park in Turin. So I spent a little bit more for my own private place. And I also want to let you know that I usually just want to get my own space. I don't like sharing that much. Even though in Palermo now, I'm staying in a co-living space called Bit Community because they have their own co-working space and it's also very, community-based. This is run by a guy called Marco, which likes to connect the locals with the foreigners. So I really wanted to share that to you. And this time I spent 1,200 euros for a whole month in these accommodations. So I think it's worth it. Because I got my own room, which is the best thing. I got my privacy a little bit, but the other part is a shared kitchen and a co-working just like 2 steps away. So that's a really cool thing. And I really think it's a good way. It's a mix, like in Turin, I got my own private place, but here it's like semi-private, so still nice. I will totally recommend you to get that. And laundry, both places have their own laundry machines, so I didn't have to pay anything, which is I was lucky in that sense. Now, if we go for food, as I told you at the beginning, the espressos, they're around €1, 110, 150 maximum, sometimes 250 if it's a specialty espresso, but still, it's great that it doesn't cost that much. In both places, I got a market nearby. I was going to Carrefour in Turin, and in the south, I was going to Familia Market. So around 50 to 60 euros, that's what I was spending for, simple things, like some bread, some chips, some like bananas, just a few things to get for the whole month, and I just keep it in my kitchen. But what I was spending the most is the full meals because I like to eat out as much as I can to try the food and to try more restaurants. And in Torino was a bit more expensive. You're spending around 15 to 25 euros for one meal. And in Palermo, it was a little bit less, like 10 to 18. I was also using a lot of Global, which is their delivery system. Like when I was working at home, either here in Palermo or Turin, like usually around 10 euros to 15 euros, everything that I spend for a pizza, for like a burger, like a meal combo. So it was a bit more expensive in Turin, 500 euros or around $600, or in Palermo, 440 euros. Or $500. And the cafes were around the same price, but this is actually a little bit hard to calculate because sometimes, I like to get a croissant or things like that. So I don't know if I want to include it because sometimes when I get like a full meal, if I'm in the coffee shop, but I'm just taking account the pour overs that are usually around 4 to 5 euros and my espressos. So they were around the same price, 65 to 75 euros for the whole month. Now, if you're working remotely, this is where it gets interesting because Italy has a great coffee culture, but not all the places are laptop friendly. In Turin, it was a little bit harder to find places you can sit down and work, even though I found a few, like the one that I was going all the time in San Salvador called Orso. But when it gets packed, I usually don't like to stay that long because they prefer, people who are just getting a coffee and going somewhere else. But here in Palermo, there's so many coffee shops. They're very laptop friendly. You can get a lunch, you can spend the whole day, if you spend money, of course. So it was a bit different. And co-working spaces also, they exist, but they're not that of a culture here. In Turin, I found a few, but it was the same. It's not the same vibe. I went to the one called Toolbox Co-working. It's a nice one. It's more for entrepreneurs or startups, and it was a bit farther from downtown. And here in Palermo, there's a few, like the one called Magnisi, that you pay either daily or monthly. But again, just doesn't feel the same. One of the cool things about the one in Palermo is that I have my own co-working space in the co-living, so I didn't have to get out that much. That's the cool thing, because actually some people outside from the co-living also come here, so you get a bit of a community if you stay in this co-living. So for that reason, I only did day passes. I didn't spend a whole month in each place, because in both the north and in the south, I got my own places, either coffee shops or co-working space in my co-living. For mobile data, I'm using an eSIM from Pangea Pass. It costs only $27 or 24 euros, and it gives you unlimited data for a whole month. You can use it here in Italy and other places around the world. I'm gonna put the links in the description because I'll totally recommend this eSIM. It's pretty cool. And for the transportation, getting around is actually pretty easy. So going from the airport to the city, in both places you have a train or you have a bus. In Palermo, I took a bus because it was easier to get to downtown. And in Turin, it was easy to take the train to go all the way to downtown. So the prices were around 16 euros for both places. And moving around, well, the cool thing about Turin is it has a huge tram system, so you can go almost everywhere. Here in Palermo, I did find the tram, but it only goes to the outskirts, so you're not gonna use it that much. But what I'm actually using a lot is the electric bikes or the electric scooters through the app Lime. You just pay a monthly payment of 299 euros, and every ride is around 1.8 euros or around $2. So it's really cool. Like, I've been using it everywhere in both cities. Because in Turin, there's actually lanes for bikes in most of the places, and the city is made out of grids. It's so easy to move around. But in Palermo, like, there's a few lanes, but you actually get to go through cars or through people. So it's a little bit of a different experience, but still, I really like that because it's so easy and faster to go anywhere you want. The bike for me was around 65 euros or $75, so many times I used it in Turin. So here in Palermo, it was a little bit less, 4 euros or $46 for the monthly line. And there's the lifestyle expenses, like going out, getting drinks, going for the aperitivos. It depends how much you like to party, basically. And in the whole Italy, you have these aperitivo things that you get some drinks before going to dinner and then going out. So in Turin especially, like an Aperol Spritz is around 7 to 8 euros. And as I said, depends how much you go out, but I spend around the same, like 100 euros or $120 for going out in the week. And there's also the fun trips that you do outside. In Palermo, I did a Cefalo trip. In both places, I went to a soccer match, but Juventus is a bigger team because it's in the Serie A and it's a bigger stadium, so it was more expensive. In Palermo, it was a little bit cheaper. But in Turin, I did a few more things, like going to Bardonecchia to ski. So of course, that's way more expensive. But if you think about the price of skiing, it was actually not that expensive, including the ski pass and the gear. It was around 70 euros or $80. So it was almost the same price that I pay in Ohio, which that's very interesting. So when you add everything together, rent, food, transportation, in Palermo, I was spending around 2,200 euros per month. That's roughly about $2,500. And in Torino, I was closer to 2,700 euros. But that also included more things like skiing, some extra activities. So it's not a perfect comparison, but it shows you that in Italy, it depends on your lifestyle. And of course, if you're in the north and the south, the difference of prices is actually very drastic. And of course, you can make it cheaper. You can do like share accommodation. You don't have to do a co-living or also like a very fancy Airbnb, the one that I had. But again, this is how I feel it's a sweet spot for me, like how much you can spend for 1 month. But yeah, that's what it really costs to live in Italy. But of course, numbers don't tell the full story. If you want to see what it actually looks like to live here as a digital nomad, I made full videos about Palermo and also Turin, and I think you're going to enjoy them. See you in the next one. Ciao.